Welcome to In the Arena of Success. This podcast is where courage meets opportunity. I'm your host, Henry Beeman, and every week we step into the arena with visionaries, innovators, and trailblazers from all walks of life. We dive deep into the heart of success and uncover the strategies, the struggles, and the unwavering spirit of those who overcome. The real question is, are you willing to step into the arena and fight for your success? Because in this arena, success is not a destination, it's a journey, and it starts right now. All right, everyone, welcome back. I am here today with Rob Campbell, a former United States Army colonel and now small business owner. He is a renowned speaker. He served as a U.S. Army Ranger, a paratrooper, has led troops both in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and has led from teams of 4 all the way up to more than 5,000. So, sir, welcome to the podcast, and I'm excited to have you on today.
Thanks, Henry. You got a great show. I'm glad to be a part of it.
So we start off with our lightning round, and the first one of those questions is, where's your hometown, and what is it known for?
My hometown is Pepperell, Massachusetts. So it's about 45 minutes west of Boston. And I think the most famous part of Pepperell, there's probably a bunch of things, but the covered bridge is there, which is, kind of a New England staple, right? But there's one right around the corner from my house. Not sure I appreciated it growing up, but a very unique piece of architecture and history in that small New England town.
That's pretty neat. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of those down here in Mississippi.
No.
Do you prefer cats or dogs?
I think I'm a cat guy. We love both. We've got 4 total, 2 cats, 2 dogs. But my dad was always a cat guy, and I think it's because they're easy, right? They don't have to do much. You can leave some food out for them, put a litter box, you're done. Dogs, on the other hand, are like young children, right? And
Absolutely.
nothing like a cat on the lap to calm you down, and so I think I'm a cat guy.
All right. Yeah, that's definitely the easy way, and they can take care of themselves when you go out of town. We just got back from a trip and having to hire dog sitters and those sorts of things, so I feel that.
Yep, not easy.
What kind of music would people find you listening to?
I think I would label, my music taste as I really love 70s classic, but I'd probably, if I had to decide, if you had me at gunpoint, I'd say 90s alternative. That's kind of when I came of age, in my early days of the Army, Green Day, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, when all that kind of blossomed and took off, I was right there as a young man. And so 90s alternative is my thing.
Okay, I can resonate with some of that. Absolutely. What are you currently reading?
Well, I'm working on book number 3, so I'm reading my own book, Left and Right of the Boom, Leading and Managing in Crisis. Gosh, I've got a dozen going on. I'm reading one right now about Israel. I was just fascinated by that country and, of course, all that's going on right now. I do like some of the politics stuff. I don't go to extremes and watching videos and news all day long, but the genius of Israel is a fascinating study, just from a very general cultural standpoint. What makes that country succeed, given its surroundings, everything that's around it? So, just fascinating to learn more about that region and its people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Transitioning a little bit, who is your biggest inspiration in life?
My biggest inspiration in life, probably my wife, Leslie. No, definitely my wife, Leslie. She sees the world through a different lens. She's an artist. She's always been an artist, and she's always embraced that. She's not kind of stubborn and fixed like me, the Army colonel that's got it all figured out. And she stays true to that, which is a great inspiration to me. I credit her with my becoming an artist in my encore life after the military, writing books and blogs. I've written 3 books and, hundreds of blogs. And so it was her that really opened my eyes that, yeah, you're an artist. You don't hold a paintbrush, but, you've got a keyboard. And there it is. So she inspires me in big and little ways all the time.
That's really neat. That's incredible. Yeah, our spouse is definitely somebody who you can admire when you're in the military and you see the things that they go through
Yeah.
and what they put up with. You can definitely lean
There
on
is
them.
no Colonel Rob Campbell without my wife Leslie. There just isn't.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Best piece of advice. Gosh, that's a tough one, Henry. Says so much. I'll go to this one. Do only those things that only you can do. Former boss of mine, three-star general, operated off of that philosophy because all these things hit you as a leader, and our tendency is just to do them, take care of them. We don't delegate well. I think that's just something that every leader needs to overcome. And that philosophy was, okay, here's this pile of stuff. What can I hand off to others? Not being lazy, but to stay more true to the position that I hold. Do only those things that only you can do. And that helped me focus on, coaching and counseling future leaders and those things that I knew that only I could do.
Absolutely. And sometimes people think that they're helping their team out by trying to do a little bit of everything, but in reality, if you're able to push those things down, you're training and teaching those folks ahead of time to learn the next job level, the skills it takes to move up
Yeah,
the ladder.
100%.
So tell me about Rob. Where did your story start in your mind?
Yeah. Born and raised in Massachusetts, grew up playing basketball. That was my passion. Pretty normal childhood. Came of age in the late 70s and 80s. Finished high school. Always kind of goal oriented, want to go to college. I knew I wanted that for quite a bit. So I got into college, didn't make the basketball team. So there goes that passion, right? Just screeching a halt. and It led me to the Army in a variety of ways. I found the military because, I was very independent. It helped me pay for college. And I said, I'll give this a shot. My dad was a reservist, and so it was kind of in the family. So I took that route and found that, man, I really like this. The challenge, the opportunity to travel, get out and see the world, all that went with it. And so I said, all right, sign me up. Got my degree completed in 1990. Took off in the Army on active duty, never looked back, and ended the career in 2016. But yeah, a big New Englander, born and raised in Massachusetts, and that's kind of my core where I come from, and that means all kinds of different things. But now a resident of Tennessee, we love the Southeast and the Appalachian Mountains, and this is where we hang now. So there's a lot in between those two spaces, and I'll probably be sharing some of that today in the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So the I guess you would be a Patriots fan then.
I am a Patriots fan. Yes, I've got a lot of glory days on the Patriots. I'm not sure where they're at today, but and the good thing is you can watch YouTube and videos all day long of the
That's
glory
right.
days in New England. And of course, the Celtics just won the championship, so
I was gonna
that's a
say,
good
hopefully
thing.
that was leading next. Hopefully Celtics as well.
It's always a season of hope in New England, every sports season.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
So you entered the army right after college. Did you do ROTC in college? Is that what
I
was your
did, yeah. We
pathway
had a
into
small
commissioning?
ROTC group, about four guys, very small, tiny program. It was a branch of the University of Massachusetts ROTC. I went to a school called North Adams State College out in Western Mass, and so jumped into ROTC after I joined the Guard. And again, really found that officership was me, and that's where I wanted to be as a leader. And yeah, so I did ROTC. And in the early 90s, they didn't need officers. The Army was downsizing, and so it's very, very difficult to get on active duty. And I kind of fight and clawed my way in and got on board and took off from there.
So what were some of the things that you learned in those formative years right after college, young man, brand new into the army, and you're a platoon leader up to maybe a company commander? What were some of the skill sets that you learned in those positions that set you up for success later?
Yeah, if I had to put a word on it, Henry, it'd be leadership. And leadership is influencing people, and I learned so much about how to do that, the good ways to do that, the bad ways, by watching and learning and being thrust into positions where I could practice it on my own and fail without loss of life. And that was really the awakening for Rob Campbell. Selflessness. I submit that I grew up a bit selfish. I was very spoiled. It was the 80s. The economy was great. And, I had everything I needed. Well, the Army really kind of weaned me of that and taught me selflessness. And the Army values really got into me. But it was leadership. It was influencing people. It was the human being. Okay, here's Henry in front of me, and I'm now in charge of him. He is in my charge. How do I best lead him? What makes him tick? How can I
Right.
communicate? And it really caused me to, forced me to mature and maybe shed some of my youth, my sarcasm and wit and sense of humor, where at times it was helpful, but often not. And so it was a massive learning curve, almost a vertical climb in my early days.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting thing that a lot of folks don't realize about the military is that it really is about people and learning people and
100%.
taking care of people. And, there's the persona, the perception of the gruff military officer or senior non-commissioned officer. In my experience, that wasn't the case. More often than not, it was a leadership proving ground of folks stumbling along the way some from time to time, but it was an opportunity to grow and develop and to learn how to lead and cultivate growth in your subordinates and in your peers.
Yeah,
And so
you're
I
right, Henry. Totally. It is it's a very human endeavor, and your depiction of the stigma, let's say, about us military on the outside to those that haven't served, especially, is exactly that. Take the hill, shut up, follow me. Indeed, there are moments like that, but day in and day out, it's that human connection, culture, values, vision, all the stuff that businesses want to emulate that makes us who we are, and it is of tremendous value on the outside.
so one of the things that I learned, and I was in the healthcare field in the
Hmm.
military, and as a wounded warrior ortho trauma nurse and also worked some in the emergency department. And we use a lot of algorithms. So there are times when everyone has to shut up and follow the direction of the person at the head of the bed. And they
Yep.
run through a set order of things to do, like during a cardiac arrest and you're doing CPR. It's very algorithmic. You're following the set steps.
Yep.
But other times you circle the wagons and bring everyone to the table and try to get as many opinions from folks as you can to make the best well-rounded decision for that patient or for the team. And I think that same sort of philosophy plays out a lot of times in leadership. But how have you come to determine when's the time to say shut up and row and when's the time to bring everyone to the table?
Yeah. It's a great, it's a form of art, right? To be able to strike a balance there. When is the time? When do I stop and rally the team here and say, hey, what's your input? How should we do this? Let's get some group think going. Or when is it? No, this is going to happen. Let's move out. You have to shed your ego. You got to kind of prep yourself for that, and always be willing to say, you know what? I don't have the answers. I'll make the decision. I'll carry the responsibility, but I don't have the answers. So I think it's situation dependent. Sometimes there is the urgency. There's some factors there. Let's say time is not on your side. This decision has to be made by 2 p.m., or the consequences are fill in the blank. The urgency is there, the time and the urgency, the seriousness of it, the impact, where you got to decide, you got to move out. And that is, okay, gang, I'm going to have to make a decision and I need you on board for this one. And here's why. That's a big part of it. Here's why I'm saying, shut up and follow
Mm.
me. Get this done. And so I think the artwork, the delivery of all that is important, but it really is time and urgency and risk. High risk, got to get it done. Okay, I don't have time for groupthink. Let's get this wrapped up. It's not,
Right.
I know better than all of you. It's not, I've got my mind made up. Those, I think, are flawed philosophies. Yes, you may have a lot of experience, in doing what you're doing, and that helps, and that you got to take stock in that. But I always believe that it's helpful to include the team because they can open your eyes to things you might not have thought about yourself.
Absolutely. Is there a experience in your formative years coming up in the military where you saw that play out?
Yeah, I mean, certainly combat is where I go back to, where we got helicopters coming, and all the conditions are ripe for this has to happen. I mean, this isn't time to go back to the planning board and kind of sketch out. So when you've got assets lining up, environmental conditions, weather is on your side, winds, like helicopters, artillery, all of those assets come to bear at a certain point in time. And then conditions change, things change. Like you got a guy that goes down, or one team is not ready, you grab another one. There's probably countless scenarios that I recall where that happened, and it was incumbent on the leader to be that person to make those split-second decisions, on the spot decisions, without input, to drive the train. But I always tried to do the front end work there, Henry, of let's get the team together and flush this out and think about where things might fail and have the contingency plans in place so that when that moment hit, I could make the decision rapidly with a bit more, experience, input, thought put into it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great thought. And to catch up some of the folks listening to the podcast who don't necessarily see the military operation cycle, there's the military decision making and planning cycle, MDMP as we like to call it, which, I mean, for a complex operation like that could take hundreds of hours,
Sure.
of man hours when you've got 8 or 10 people working full time to come up with a plan. And sometimes you don't have that amount of time. Um, but I really like what you said there about trying to analyze failure points and those sorts of courses of action ahead of time so that when
Yep.
it comes time for the decision point, you have that background information to make a good decision.
Yep. That's the left of the boom, right? My new book, Left and Right of the Boom. That's all the stuff you do before a crisis hits. And it's the same in planning, where you flush out those things where things could go wrong. Murphy's Law, right? If it
Right.
can go wrong, it will go wrong.
Yeah, that's great. So tell me a little, that's left of the boom. Tell me a little bit about right of the boom.
Well, right of the boom is so left and right of the boom is, that the concept that came out of dealing with the IED, as you know, improvised explosive device in Iraq and Afghanistan. We were riddled with that. It was the number one killer of service members. So we developed the military did this concept of let's get left and right of the boom. Left of the boom, all the stuff you did prior to. During the boom is how you lead when the bomb goes off. Right of the boom is that discipline to return to the ugliness of what just happened. And often we want to close that out, turn our back on it, and sprint in the other
Right.
direction. But the discipline to return to that, flush it out, analyze it, gather the lessons, and then put those lessons into place and adapt because the boom is coming again in some other form. And so that's the right of the boom space. We do after action reviews to determine what happened, to tease out the lessons and capture those and put the changes in place. It's a very important phase.
Absolutely. So you talk about there the discipline to return. Was there a time in your career where you've met one of those kinds of challenges that seemed almost so daunting that you wanted to throw in the white towel and or the white
Yeah,
flag? And how do you overcome that?
indeed. I lost a soldier in Afghanistan, Patrick Devo we call him, and it happened the day before I took command of my task force in Afghanistan. We hadn't even begun our deployment. But we were already on the ground transitioning with the outgoing unit, and he was killed in an IED explosion. And that tested my leadership. I was separated from my troops at the time. We were kind of scattered. We were brand new. We were fresh and energized, and all the risk was there for us to overreact. All the risk was there for us not to be able not to communicate well through a scenario like that. There were just tons of risk for this thing to really take hold, for us to take vengeance on the local population who probably saw this bomb being placed in the road, all those things. But I knew better. I had been a combat veteran of Iraq by that point, so I had been in combat, and I had some good seasoned leaders on my team that could rise to the occasion and be the mature, calm voice in the storm. And we did our work on the left of the boom space. We trained together for a year in some pretty tough scenarios. It was a crazy year before we went, but all of that investment in training and leader development paid off in spades for when that hit. Uh, for me, I think it was just, and this is the stuff I talk about in the book. It was just trying to be the calm in the storm. It was emotional. It was everything. And my emotions peaked like anybody else's. But I knew that I had to kind of push that aside and be the adult, calm person in the room to say, okay, what do we know? Who else needs to know it? What's being done? These just simple questions to flush out and get answers to as we're dealing with this horrific scenario. And then, how do we deal with this after? Well, you've got unit trauma on the front end of a 12-month deployment. And it was really just about leaders being present with their people each day and helping them deal with this. And then communicating back to Alaska, which is where my unit was based, to make sure the families were informed as to what was happening and to ensure them that we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. All those things, just I think that the calm, mature, methodical as you could, there was certainly some split-second decisions to be made, approach to getting through that, I think kind of saved the day. I know it saved the day for us. And it wasn't just me, it was a series of leaders in my organization that really rose to the occasion in our darkest moment, that got us through that. And so that's the example I use in the book because it is my default example of, wow, okay, this is bad. And the timing, everything about it was just horrible. But we got through it.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
was really ins inspired to hear that and to hear about the calm and the ability to walk through something like that. That's
Yeah,
challenging
I had
for
I had
anybody.
seen people screw that up in training and combat. I had seen the results of the emotions and the excitement and all that. And yeah, listen, I was emotional, I was excited, all those things hit me. I wasn't immune to any of that.
Right.
But I knew I held on to that. Okay, I have got to be the calm in the storm.
Well, it kind of reminds me, hearing you say that reminds me of when I was in company command. This was at Martin Army Community Hospital, at the time Fort Benning, Georgia, now Fort
Hmm.
Moore.
Yep.
I had 350 soldiers in my company, all medical professionals, from the doctor to the medic. And I ran all the outlying clinics on Fort Benning, 10 outlying clinics across Benning for basic training and airborne school and armor and infantry BOLIC and captain's career course. And then I had 7th Group Special Forces down at Eglin and all the Ranger training battalions. So from Eglin all the way up to Dahlonega. So our team was spread out pretty thin, and this great thing called COVID came. And it got a little chaotic, but with my company staff, right as it all was breaking off, I wrote on my whiteboard, all right, here are our 3 priorities. And the first priority of action was the chaos stops here. Because the brigade and everybody's going crazy and the installation's going crazy, trying to figure out how we're going to keep the trainee pipeline open. And for our folks that were boots on the ground at the company level, was and I had to write it on there mostly for myself more than
Sure.
anybody else to
Yeah.
remember to not get spun up into the chaos and what are the requests for information from high, or what does everybody want to know and why do they want to know it and how can I preempt it. And my brain starts going down all these rabbit holes and I'm like, all right, let's stop the chaos, let's protect those that are under us that are actually doing the work every day. 14,000 COVID swabs a week. to keep the trainee pipeline open on the installation. So they were busy and they didn't need me reaching down their neck every couple hours asking for information. So
Right.
figuring out how to develop that. So I had to write that on the board. We wrote it for the team, but it was probably mostly for me to remember it.
Sure. Yeah. So that, Henry, that's a leadership crucible right there, right? That defining moment. It's easy for you to return to that, remember that, because it was seared into your brain forever. And you were leading probably one of the more diverse and distributed organizations that you can imagine. And you talk about the physician all the way down to a medic. The diversity there in so many forms, and then how spread out everything was. It wasn't all there for you to touch. And especially at
Right.
company command level, where it's a very tactical application of leadership, that's a massive challenge. And then the last part is how you prioritize things. I think what you described was you focused on that which you could control, and that
Yeah.
was the tone that you were setting. The chaos stops here. The guidance and where we're going to really focus on it, because all the other noise and the unknowns and the trying to figure it out, that wasn't going anywhere. It was just going to manifest and fester. But you focused on what you could control. And in essence, that's the same thing, same application of leadership with Lieutenant Colonel Rob Campbell on the battlefield as a battalion commander, or Henry in a hospital in the middle of a global pandemic. Same thing.
It was definitely one of those kinds of experiences. It's you step into the crucible and you learn a lot from it for sure.
Bet you do. Yep.
So tell me a little bit about your latter part of your career. We've kind of made it up to battalion command at this point, but I know that you were a brigade commander with the 101st
Right. Yeah.
Screaming Eagles.
I'm still humbled by that experience to say that I commanded 1st Brigade of the 101st Airborne Division, the famed 101st. And I was a leader there among a small group of brigade level commanders. Henry, I think like you, I just kept showing up and doing my job and going the extra mile, taking care of my boss and my unit and being that team player. And the Army answered that with rewarding me with those commands. I flourished, I think, in battalion command as a counterinsurgent because warfare had changed. And I thought I fit well into that because the Cold War and the way we fought in that rigid tank on tank, soldier on soldier, ship on ship, if you will, was very scientific and rigid in terms of how we applied that type of warfare. Um, Counterinsurgency was a mosaic of pieces and parts of reinventing and trying new things and just, weird space. And I flourished there. I was able to really recreate things and get creative, use my creativity. So that's where it worked for me. And I went to a training center after my Afghanistan tour in battalion command, where I really grew quite a bit. Not only teaching others, but seeing, just becoming a student of the profession and student of modern warfare. And I was recognized for it, and the Army selected me for colonel and for brigade command in the 101st. And that was a remarkable experience. The difference between battalion command and brigade command, battalion still kind of tactical, certainly some strategic elements of it, but you're there with the troops each day and you're rung down
Right.
from this thing called brigade. When I get to brigade command, a lot more of this up and out, a lot more strategic, a lot more steering the battleship gently. You don't turn a brigade on a dime like a company or a battalion. Very, very different experience, and it was a wonderful opportunity for me. And I had when you think of the difference between the battalion command, I had my company commanders were my key leaders in the organization. And these are people that had 8, 12 years in maybe.
Right.
For all the way up to battalion commanders at the 19, 18, 19-year mark of their career, much more senior and experienced. So just a different application of leadership as a brigade commander than a battalion commander. But it was an amazing journey. There's so many stories and experiences and things came out of that that truly helped me, not only in my military career, but on, at my encore life as well.
Absolutely. And that's the next step that I wanted to start talking about is tell us a little bit about your encore life, as you call it, life after the Army. How did the Army
Yeah.
prepare you to be successful in the civilian world?
So I wrote about that in my second book called At Ease, Enjoying the Freedom You Fought For. And it was my journey out of uniform after 27 plus years. I was institutionalized in the military. I didn't know anything else, and I was traveling that rigid path of rank and command. And now I had a blank sheet of paper for the first time in my life. And that was daunting. I mean, I've been in the heart of darkness in some scary, dangerous places, but that blank sheet of paper was really daunting. Okay, now what? I got to the point in my military career where my path and the Army's path started to diverge for the first time. My wife and I had different goals and aspirations and wanted to try something new. The kids were grown and out of the house by then. And there we were. And so we decided to make the transition. It wasn't a bitter split. I cherish my military career to this day. It has served me well, and I do it all over again. But it was time for something new. And so we were excited, like kids, on that next journey. And so we retired in 2016. In fall of 16, there I am, hair growth experiments going on and all these strange things. And I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but I did know that my core purpose and passion was leadership, to make a difference in the lives of others through optimistic leadership. I went through a course in the military called True Growth that helped me tease that out. And I still have the card in my wallet that states that. And I knew I had to be true to that on the outside. I didn't know exactly how, but I had that going for me, my why, my core purpose, which I think is missing with a lot of veterans today. So I had that at least, and I tried to be true and follow that. And that's where it kind of led me into writing my first book on leadership, starting my leadership coaching and speaking practice. And then that's kind of led me into entrepreneurship, which we can get into. But that's kind of the early stage of Rob Campbell's military career, is just trying to figure it out, wrestle with being in this new space when no one really knew me, my rank, what I had done, and interacting more with those that had never served than I had before, and just dealing with all that. There were ups and downs, but I don't have regrets. We learned quite a bit on the journey. I think I'm coming up on 8 years now. It still feels like yesterday. I don't know when you get to put an ED at the end of transition. I think it's just a journey that you travel.
Oh, I like that. That's a good
Yep.
talking point. I like that a lot.
Hmm.
So as you're traveling down this path and you're starting your leadership business and consulting, speaking, writing, that's a diverse group of things that you're kind of bringing together. What are
Yeah.
some of the skills you talk about the True Growth course, but those decades, 27 years of leadership experience that
Right.
you got poured into you that now translates, how do you find that translating into the corporate market space?
It translates well, Henry, but it's hard to translate. And that is because there is no training and education and leadership in K through 12 or in college. There is some pockets of that, some courses and degrees even, but very little. By and large, it doesn't exist. And so a guy like Henry goes to college, gets a degree in finance, let's say, and gets an MBA and gets out and he's in the finance department. Never served in the military, next thing you know, and he's crushing it, doing great. Next thing you know, he's thrust into a leadership position because he's smart and he can perform. And he fails miserably because he doesn't have that training, that good fortune that you and I had in the Army, to be pulled from our companies and placed into training events and practice leadership in training and execute it in combat. They don't have that good fortune. So uh, what we learned in the military and all of my experience of 27 years translates beautifully into business today, because I tell my clients there's not a single thing in leadership that you'll experience that I haven't already screwed up a dozen times. and learn from it. And I'm now here to carry those lessons to you and teach you how to do it. And like we said at the very beginning of this show, it's a very human endeavor. Whether it's
Right.
a human in uniform or it's a human behind a cubicle, it's the same thing. You're trying to influence that person to do something they might not otherwise do. And so those concepts, those principles that the Army taught me apply greatly on the outside in private business. And I find that one of my awakenings, learning was it's pretty simple. It's small level basic stuff like junior leaders would do, of knowing and being and doing and setting the example and communicating. Most stuff that I would hand to a staff sergeant in one of my Army units and say, "Hey, go fix that." Well, that's what companies need today, even at the most senior levels. And again, it's not a
Right.
lick on them, but I can deliver that. I can easily dip back into my reservoir. And so I found a lot of fulfillment there. And in many places, I'm not an egotistical guy, but I probably became somewhat indispensable because leadership problems happen every day, every hour. And I was there to kind of help guide them through those storms and offer some tips and stories of when I got it right and when I got it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about the entrepreneurship side of that because you're doing all of this on your own. You're not working for some big firm. You're not with
Right,
Deloitte or McKinsey or one of these other big consulting firms. You
right.
stepped out into the middle of that white piece of paper and started drawing your circle and developing your area of influence. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, brute force and ignorance. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Henry, I started my first business, the leadership business, in spring of 17. Mind you, I'm fresh out of the military, still experimenting with beards and hair growth and all this weird stuff. And I took what I called a gateway drug. A friend of mine introduced me to the gateway drug. And a gateway drug is this. I was writing my book and I was like, oh, this would be a great business. I could speak, coach, teach off of this, make a bunch of money. And so I got a tax ID, got a website, got a business card. Poof, I'm in business. No, I just had an idea. I had a hobby. Case in point, spring of 17, Rob Campbell Leadership is born. January of 18, my first client. Took me that long to find someone to write me a check. I had to work for somebody for free. Mind you, I'm a brigade commander, a 27-year, 3 combat tour, but still, that doesn't matter for a business. They wanted to know how I might increase, their revenue and make a difference in and that's a difficult thing to prove in leadership. But that
Absolutely.
was the kind of my opening salvo to entrepreneurship and very eye-opening. But it was just me, so it was somewhat simple. And of course, I have a military pension, which keeps the light on. So I was able to navigate those rough waters. And I almost jumped off the ship a few times. I really did, because it was so hard. It was a startup, and startups are impossible. Well, I met a friend, John Panichone, who runs Vet to CEO, VETTO CEO. It's a military entrepreneurship program. And he opened my eyes to the other paths of entrepreneurship that I wasn't considering, those being franchise and by existing. And I became the executive director in this program, kind of helped them grow it a bit, and learned a ton there of the different paths and how to really be an entrepreneur. And it was another mountain for me to climb, like battalion command and brigade command. And it was there. And of course, I missed having people around me, and I really didn't feel like a true entrepreneur as a sole proprietor in Rob Campbell
Right.
leadership. So I started looking around for businesses to buy. That's the path I wanted to take. And I started looking in the trades because they're pretty recession proof. You always need an electrician or a plumber. So I was looking there. I came close on a couple, just didn't really do it for me. And then here in Johnson City, Tennessee, I was introduced to a window fashions company, shutters, blinds, and shades. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go look at it. So I did. In the spring of 21, summer of 21, I went down and looked at All About Blinds. And the building was for sale, as was the business. And they had a good cash flow model. I thought they had a great reputation. There was opportunity for growth. it was all there. And I reached out to John, an accountant and a lawyer, got a little team put together, and um, started hanging out with this business to learn it and know it. And I bought it in January of 22. And that was an existing business. On day one, I was taking in checks. So it was functioning already before I got there. I
Right.
have just taken it now and have grown it. And then I started a painting company in August of last year. Interior, exterior painting, all surface. I found a great young guy named Cody, he's a very good painter, and a fine young lady named Emily, who runs the business. And, I don't do it every day. And so that's really where I got kind of jumped into that ring of entrepreneurship. And it's been an incredible journey of growth and learning. And my military experience has served me very well, but also been a hindrance, I would say. And I'd like to talk about that more if you want.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would love to hear that. Before we jump into it, there's two things I wanted to highlight here. Are, is one, your leadership experience from the military has played into all of these businesses and has set the grounds for success. But the piece that most people starting in their careers don't think about enough is that retirement piece. And you talk about your pension as you stepped out into the blank piece of paper, you had a way to consistently keep the lights on and were able to take the time to experiment and to work through those things and not have to worry about, okay, how am I going to feed my family this week?
Yeah, it
Uh,
it is a differentiator for me, and I realize that. And so as I talk to people and coach those who are making the transition, I do it from a standpoint of, okay, you got no paycheck when you take off the uniform. So how do you do that? Well, we're asking the wrong question when we transition. I say we, the system, the military is, hey, Henry, thanks for your service. What do you want to do next? What do you want to do? Well, you were in the medical field, so therefore you must be passionate about being in the medical profession. No, not necessarily. There's no magic formula that puts you in a medical company command. None. They looked at your aptitude, they needed medical professionals, poof, there you go. Or that may be an infantry
right,
officer or an MP or an engineer, whatever that is. And so that job passion alignment or misalignment comes in full force when you get out. And so it's really about learning, okay, what is it makes you tick? What's going to allow you to go to bed fulfilled every night? What's going to motivate you to get up and go do something?
mm,
Well, I really like working on vehicles. Okay, that's different from medical. So chase that. Find something there. Get it more right than wrong. Get a job, certainly, but don't just blindly reach for a paycheck. Because what you're
right,
going to find is you'll wind up unhappy. And at the same time, you bought the house, the boat, the car, you've anchored yourself down, you're stuck. Right. And
right.
so that's the key piece of advice for those making that leap into something is get yourself stabilized, get it more right than wrong, but stay flexible. Because wouldn't it be nice to course correct if you
Mm,
discover a year into the journey, this ain't it, this community ain't it, this job isn't it, and I experienced those things and fortunately was able to unplug and move.
unplug and work through those challenges. And that's probably one of the more challenging things after coming from an institution like the military where you have
Yeah.
set disciplines and you know what to expect to step into, well, I can do almost anything. And that's something that I've struggled with. Uh, is not so much a lack of ideas as you get the overabundance of ideas and thinking, oh, I could
Sure.
do anything. All of these different things pop into your head, and then you try to do too many things at one time. And I had several small businesses that I had started or come into in different ways that
Yep.
flopped and completely failed because I was trying to do too many different things and didn't have a narrow enough niche because you come out of this narrow niche of the military and you did this one thing and you did it well and you're like, all right, well, I could branch that into five or six different things, and the next thing you know, you're trying to do too much and the water's too thin and it doesn't work. And that's one of those failure experiences that I don't think people hear enough about.
No, you're right. And I'm not surprised by the story you just shared. And this is where I think the military can be a hindrance for us. Look, at the end of the day, I think veterans are fantastic, future business owners, and we've got to get more of them doing it for all the leadership and problem solving they bring. But I submit what Henry experienced there was a military officer that was in a profession where if you didn't try that other thing, if you didn't slap this on, bolt that on, lives were at stake. So of course we did it. We jumped in and we did it, and we had depth in our organizations to be able to do that. You could hand it off to a leader, you could put it over into a section somewhere, and they would see that through. In entrepreneurship, you're it. I mean, you don't have anybody to hand that stuff to, yet you still have that mindset of, oh yeah, we can do that too, and we can do that. And this notion that, well, I'm a combat veteran. How hard could this be? I could do this. Well, sure, that's going to get you so far until you're in it and you realize, oh my God, I've overextended. I didn't realize the market. I didn't understand money because we don't understand money in the military. Your medical company command was never going out of business, ever.
No.
You never lost an ounce of sleep over payroll, ever. You never managed cash flow. Yeah, okay, you were a good steward of your government funds, but they were never going away. And
Right.
now, almost overnight, you are thrust into a private organization that, oh yeah, this could go away tomorrow. Oh yeah, we could run out of money. And dude, that's an awakening that I think a lot of us don't realize. Because you mentioned it a
Absolutely.
minute ago, this rigid path that we follow in the military. I can do anything. I'm not going to be fired tomorrow. In entrepreneurship, all that stuff is now a reality.
And a risk. My work in personnel, which is really ties into your book title. It's not personnel, it's personal, and I absolutely love it. It's probably the best book title I've ever heard, and if I could steal it, I would have. But I love it. Working in that, one bad hire on average cost organizations between $15,000 and $30,000.
Yep.
So you're a new
Yep. And we don't see that
entrepreneur.
in the military. We don't see that
No,
impact.
you don't see it,
Nope.
and it's
And
stuff that
that's a
we're not
hindrance on the outside.
accustomed
You're
to.
absolutely right, Henry. It's real on the outside.
It's real, and you've got this new baby. You're an entrepreneur. You've started this project. It's your thing. It's your passion. You've grown it, and now you find yourself working from sun up until sundown, and then some. And you need that extra hand, so you hire somebody out of a time of stress, and they turn out to be a bad hire, and now your whole project starts to fall apart because they cost you 15 or $20,000
Yep.
because you
You
made
nailed
a
it.
hiring mistake when you were in the crucible.
Yep. You nailed it. And yeah, it's totally true. All that said, I still think it's the right way to go for veterans.
Absolutely. There's a learning curve and there's a resiliency to veterans that you bounce back from that. And I think it's not just veterans that experience it. The whole world experiences these challenges and starting businesses and trying to grow them and learning, and there's all kinds of business schools out there, but not a whole lot of real world street smarts. I just interviewed the co-founder of an organization called Augment MBA, uh,
Mm.
a new MBA program that's a digital program where they've interviewed and have courses taught by CEOs and founders of companies that have grown up, like YouTube, Shazam, Waze. Some of these companies that have been startups and have grown, they've taken their founders and used them to create this MBA coursework.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's going to be an incredible game changer to hear
Indeed.
it from the boots on the ground. The MBA is a dime a dozen. You can go get those and still know nothing about how to operate and run a
Oh,
business.
yeah. 100%.
So
Yep.
these life lessons that you learn and walk through, there needs to be a little bit more transparency around them. You look at social media, and I think the youth of today's generation see social media and see the glass is full. It's not even half full. It's completely full, but they're getting a skewed perspective. Your people are only posting the good stuff most of the time. You don't get the equal dose of, all right, hey, this is where I tripped and fell, and you can too, and you'll get up and keep moving.
Yep. Yeah, it's true. There's a lot of, I see a lot of maybe too much attention on startups. Because, like I said earlier, startups are impossible. I'm not here to squash the startup dream. I'm not a startup hater, but they're impossible. And you got to have some sort of fallback because you're not going to make a dime off a startup in the first couple of years just to get it up and running.
Right.
But this is where all of the romance is, and Shark Tanks and pitch contests, and that's great, but what happens tomorrow morning when it's just you, you know, holding the keys?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep,
That's some great advice. So tell me a little bit more about your first, I believe it's your first book.
yep. Yeah, it's personal, not personnel. So I had an experience with Army Human Resources Command, this big behemoth that managed all the people across the Army, far separated from any tactical unit anyway. Didn't know Henry or Rob Campbell. It had us on an Excel spreadsheet and would move us from one place to the other, which would result in a move for us and our family across the country or the world, right? Now, I get that. That's what we do in the military. We move. Well, they wanted to move a soldier of mine in the month of February. Which, again, okay, customary for a soldier to go from one place to the next. Well, he had a daughter in high school, and he had a mortgage, and he had a wife who was working. And so, what do you think happens in the month of February? Well, he goes by himself to a new unit across the country, and his daughter's in high school. Why can't the Army punt on this thing for a few months and move him in the month of June? Right? If that conversation had occurred between this manager somewhere with an Excel spreadsheet and this soldier. So I'm on the phone, going to bat for this guy and his family. And I say, hey, look, this stuff is personal. It's not personnel. You got to get beyond this name on a sheet and get to know, hey, John or Henry, we're getting ready to move you in February. What does that do? Well, it does quite a bit, actually. Here's my scenario. Okay. All right, how's June work for you? I can do that. Get my daughter graduated, get the house ready to go, and the wife. We can do that. Okay, good. Let's do that. Simple. So that's a concept. So that first book really walks through my people-centric approach to leadership
Mm,
and how a third of my calendar was occupied by people-centric activities, counseling, family readiness stuff. That stuff that was all about our people and how I always looked through the lens of people in everything we did. I never came off of that. So it captures all of that. And I had success. We had the #1 brigade in the military for human resource performance. And we led our division in retention countless times because people wanted to stay because of what we did. And that book shares those lessons from the battlefield to the boardroom.
that's incredible. Well, what would be your top two or three pieces of parting advice to our audience that are listening to this podcast today?
That's a big one. There's a bunch. I'll give you this. Know yourself. Spend some time in introspection and take all those tests, Myers-Briggs, DISC, whatever you can get your hands on. You can find them free on the internet. I can help you with that. I've got a process that I use called Forte. But know yourself. Who are you? Are you introverted, extroverted, patient, impatient, dominant, non-dominant, conformist, non-conformist? All these different things. How do you receive information? What are those versions of yourself and how do they show up? What triggers them? All that kind of stuff. Know yourself, and you can navigate the earth much better informed, whether you're leading
Mm,
people or buying a home or deciding what community to live in. I think knowing yourself is going to be key. Um, for the veterans that are listening to this, that are making a transition, enjoy the freedom you fought for. Combat veteran or not, you signed on the dotted line, and your, nation would have sent you to war if they did or if they didn't. Enjoy the freedom that you fought for, right? Seek those things that bring you fulfillment on the outside. If money wasn't an issue, right? Roof over the head and everything, food on the table, what would you do? What are those 5 times in your
yeah.
life where you were in it, confident, flow state, all that? What are those, and what do they have in common, and what do they tell you about this next path that you ought to travel? This doesn't mean pick up a surfboard, go live on an island. It probably means have a job that's something that can support you in pursuit of that passion. Know yourself, find your playground. And the third
Mm,
one is to really consider entrepreneurship. even if you're not a veteran and you're in a space working for somebody. And here's why I say that, Henry. Uh, I'm writing my fourth book right now. It's called From Brigade Command to Blinds Installer. I used to command a large enterprise called a brigade of nearly 5,000 men and women. Now I stand in the bathtubs of old ladies and measure their windows. Now I don't actually do that, but that's the kind of the party line, or the joke with the book is, why in the world would I choose that? Well, here's why. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, some days I have a tape measure in hand, far vastly different from being a commander of a brigade, a large enterprise. But I drive home each day the captain of my own ship. I answer to nobody. I make the decisions. I steer the organization, and that's incredibly fulfilling. And when you think in terms of risk, if I have a job in a company and I'm working for someone, making them rich and not myself rich, well, I might lose that job. That's only one job. Well, now I'm out. If I lose a customer in my blinds business, I got 3,000 more. So it's a risk mitigation. I'll go to those other customers, and those are the ones that will keep me, afloat. And just the opportunity to give back to the community, continue to serve because we have service in our DNA. Entrepreneurship, I believe, is a tremendous path, a wonderful path to get there. So know yourself, find your playground, consider entrepreneurship. There's a dozen more, Henry, but we don't have time.
Well, those are great. And since we don't have time to cover the rest of your points, where can people find more about you, and where can they find you if they want to seek out your consulting or hire you as a speaker or get your books?
Yeah, two places, probably three. LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. So if you're messaging me there and interacting with me there, Rob Campbell Leadership. That's where you find me on LinkedIn. I'll respond. I'll definitely interact with you, unless you're trying to sell me something. I hate those ones. RobCampbellLeadership.com. That has a bunch of my offerings, my books, my blogs, things like that. And then the Hey Red Speakers Agency, Heyred, Hey Red Speakers Agency. Teresa Gittimer is my speaker agent, very, very good at helping organizations get the right person, whether it's me or somebody else, to their special event to add that special touch of a keynote address. That's where you can find me. I look forward to connecting and serving in a variety of ways.
Fantastic. Well, Rob, thanks so much for coming on today. You've been a great guest, and it's been an honor to have you.
Thanks, Henry.
Did you like what you heard on today's podcast? If so, do me a quick favor and hit the like and subscribe button. That way you'll stay updated on all the new content that I publish. Also, visit me on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and tell me what you want to hear more about. I love to hear your comments. That way I can continue to produce content that you love and enjoy. You can also check out my website, henrybeeman.com.